What we're going to do now is look at the instruments and aircraft equipment in the 185. We'll first start with the fuel selector valve. We can either have it selected to both, we can have it selected to the left tank or to the right tank. We normally fly it with the fuel selector on both. Coming forward, we have the on-off fuel selector. Push the button, pull the lever up and the fuel is off. Push it down and we have the fuel on. Moving further forward, we have the trim wheel, elevator trim. Wind it back for nose up and we wind it forward for nose down. We have a rudder trim, just works in the natural sense. Wind it left for left rudder, right for right rudder. Further along we have the flaps. We have 4 position flaps. We have 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 30 degrees and 40 degrees. Just a press button to work it. In the agricultural 185 we have a dump lever, which if we get into trouble we just pull it all the way back. It allows all the liquid to drop out of the hopper. Coming across here now we have the fan brake. We pull it on, it locks our pump, stops it working, push it forward, it allows the pump to start working. Moving across now to our handbrake. To operate the handbrake, we push the rudder pedals down, pull the brake out and turn it down. The brakes are now locked on. To release them, we just turn the lever and push it in, the brakes are now released. Moving along the bottom of the instrument panel we have our master switch, which turns all our electrics on. The next switch along is the emergency fuel pump switches. They just work in the normal sense, push them up for on and they flick back down for off. The magneto switches, we have off, left magneto, right magneto, left magneto, both, turn it all the way around to start. Normal switches for lights and pitot heat, our rotating beacon and our landing lights. The throttle, normal push to open the throttle, pull it to close it. Pitch control, all the way in for full fine, all the way in for full course, all the way out for full course. Normally in full fine for takeoff. Mixture control, all the way in for full rich, all the way out for full lean. Cabin air, just pull it out for on and push it in for off, and the cabin heaters are the same. The cowl flaps for the engine, we normally run them full open. However, if we need to close them, we just push the lever right down, that's fully closed, and we can have them at any position in between. On the right hand side of the instrument panel we have the hopper contents gauge. It is in actual fact an old airspeed indicator gauge which we have converted to use as a hopper contents gauge. Looking up the panel further, we have a cylinder head temperature gauge, an oil temperature gauge and the oil pressure gauge on the bottom line. On the top line we have the 2 fuel tank gauges, one either side, and in the middle we have the amp meter. Further up we have the exhaust gas temperature gauge for leaning the aircraft out. Moving across we have the manifold pressure gauge and the fuel flow gauge, and then we have the tachometer. Then we come to the radio cluster, this section here, and down the bottom of it we have the spray valve switch. We switch it up, works the spray system, switch it down, stops the spray system. Coming further across the pilot's panel we have the turn and bank indicator. Coming up we have the artificial horizon, the directional gyro, which we couple to the compass, or set to the compass. Moving down we have our spray pressure gauge, tells us the pressure in the booms. The suction gauge, which tells us the amount of suction we have to work the gyroscopic instruments. In the left hand corner we have the airspeed indicator. The altimeter, which we set to the airfield height, and the vertical speed indicator. We're going to do the pre-flight inspection now. Initially we start off inside the aircraft. The first thing we do is remove the control wheel lock. Check that our magneto switches are off. We turn the master switch on and check that the fuel contents are sufficient in the aircraft's fuel tanks. We turn the master switch off again. Fully extend the flaps. Check the fuel is on and the selector valve is to both. Then we'll go to the outside of the aircraft to finish our pre-flight inspection outside. The first check we make externally is that we check that the dump lever is working. I'll pull the dump and you should see it drop away, and then visually check that it has dropped away. The next thing we check is the fuel for the correct grade and for cleanliness. If it was dirty, we would have a definite line between the fuel and whatever sediment we had in the tank, and the grade is by the colour, which is green for 100, 130. Let's get rid of that. Next we check the flap hinges for cracking. Check the actuation bar for cracking, both hinges. The hinges on the ailerons, same thing, cracking. You check the pins haven't moved. And we come to the wingtip. Check that for security. Just give the aeroplane a gentle rock and make sure there's no creaking. Along the leading edge, we check the leading edge for dents, in case we've hit something previously. Check the fuel tank vent is clear. Spray booms are secure. The pitot tube is clear. And we'll get up and visually check the fuel tanks for contents and correct grade. Coming back down again, we check the undercarriage, check that the brake pads aren't worn, check the static vent, make sure it's clear and there's no obstructions. Check in the back of the engine cowl. Do another fuel strain and drain check. Exactly the same check as before. While we're here, we also check the oil for the correct contents, normally running on 9 quarts. Close the cowling back up once again. Underneath, we check for the security of the fan. The fan brake is locked on. There's just no loose articles. Round the front, check in the engine cowl for any bird's nest that may have developed overnight. Check that the air filter is clean. Check our propeller blades. As we check them, we just turn it through each compression backwards, just in case we do have a live magneto. Come around to the static vent on this side, check it's clear. Check the brakes, pads aren't worn, there's no leaks. Also on both wheels, don't forget to just check your tyres for any cracks. And we check the tanks on this side of the aircraft, once again visually, and check that the caps are secure. We come along the leading edge once again. Stop here, check these spray booms on this side. The tank vent's clear. We have no dents on the leading edge. Once again, we just check the security of this wingtip. Give the aircraft a gentle rock. And now we run down the hinges once again. We do another fuel check at this tank. Then we just check the tops of the wings to make sure there's no buckling. If there's buckling, it's usually due to overstress. The same down the fuselage, we make sure there's no buckles in the fuselage. In the fin, check the leading edge of the elevators, tail plane. Elevators for movement and checking the hinges. Check that both elevators are, in actual fact, tied together properly. Tail cone is secure. Check the tail wheel and spring. Always grease the turning mechanism and the wheel daily. Coming around, we check the rudder. Check the hinges for cracking once again. Make sure there is deflection. The same on this elevator. Check the leading edge. Check, then just generally check the fuselage for any buckling. After completing the pre-flight inspection, we'll prepare to start the engine. First we check that the seat is adjusted, as we can easily move the rudder pedals. Our harness is adjusted and the doors are closed and locked. The fuel valve should be in the on position and the fuel selector to both. The brakes depressed and set, locked on. Radios should be all off. The circuit breakers all in. The wing flaps we check all 4 positions. Cowl flaps checked. Open, closed, open. We are now ready to go through starting the engine. First we should switch the master switch on, turns the electrics on. Mixture to rich. Propeller to fine. Our throttle closed. And then set, 1/4 of an inch open. Auxiliary fuel pumps on. And then off. If the propeller is clear, switch on and turn all the way to start. The aircraft fires. And set at 1,000 revs. Check the idle and check that our oil pressure comes up within 30 seconds. Amp meter is charging, radios on. Taxiing. Taxi the 185. To start it rolling, normal procedure. Increase the power till the aircraft starts to roll. Reduce the power and check the brakes. Keep the aircraft straight. The use of rudder pedals. The aircraft will tend to try and weathercock into wind. We compensate for this by the use of opposite rudder, using small amounts of power to increase the slipstream over the rudder. If the aircraft continues to weathercock, then we'd also use a slight amount of braking. To turn the aircraft, just taxi it nice and slowly. apply the rudder in the direction you want to turn the aircraft will start to turn. The tendency here, because we have the CG after the main wheels, the aircraft will want to continue turning. You will need to use opposite rudder to stop the turn. Sometimes a little bit of power. If the aircraft continues to try and turn, then you'll also need to use a little bit of differential braking in the opposite direction to the turn to stop it. Our pre-takeoff checks. Park the aircraft in the wind. Park brake on. Cabin doors are all secure. And we're strapped in. Controls are full, free and correct. Instruments checked and set. Fuel shut-off valve is on, fuel selector is on, we have enough fuel for the flight and 45 minutes reserve by the fuel indicators. Mixture is rich. Our flaps are set for takeoff. Trim is set slightly nose up and the rudder trim is set in the centre. Cowl flaps are open. Cylinder head temperature and oil temperatures are up, so we can now advance the throttle to 1700 RPM. Holding the stick back to stop any nose over tendency. Check our magnetos. Initially turn to the left magneto. We should have a rev drop of not more than 150 RPM, back to both. Right magneto should have a rev drop of no more than 150 RPM and no more than 50 RPM between the two magnetos. Back to both for takeoff. Cycle the propeller from full fine to full course. And back to full fine for takeoff. Check that the RPM returns to where it started from. Engine instruments, amp meters charging, oil pressure's in the green, oil temperature's in the green and the cylinder head temperature's in the green. Suction to work our gyroscopic instruments. Set the throttle on idle. Should idle approximately 600 RPM. And set back at 1000. Radios are switched on. Rotating beacon on. Park brakes are off. And we are ready for takeoff. Normal takeoff. For the normal takeoff, the first thing we need to do is to pick a point at the end of the strip to keep the aircraft straight on. There is a tendency for the aircraft to swing to the left as we apply power and as we lift the tail off the ground. This is due to the gyroscopic force of the propeller and also the slipstream effect on the fin and rudder. It will swing to the left, so we'll need some right rudder. Okay, we've got a point picked at the end of the strip, being one of the white markers. We apply the power smoothly and fully. The aircraft will try and swing slightly to the left. There's a little bit of right rudder. We check that the aircraft has full RPM, 2850 RPM, 40 knots. Forward pressure on the control column, the aircraft's tail will come up, it'll try to swing to the left, compensated, 65 knots, gentle back pressure will bring the aircraft into the air. Set the aircraft up at 85 knots and 2700 RPM. Remove the flap and check that the cowl flaps are open, and lean the aircraft as required for smooth operation. Engine failure after takeoff. If we're unlucky enough to have an engine failure, first thing to do is lower the nose and get our glide speed of 80 knots. Pick a suitable paddock straight ahead or within 30 degrees. Only turn far enough to miss obstacles. Check that your fuel is switched off and your master switch is off. Use flap as required and land virtually straight ahead. Normal climb in the 185. Normal climb, nose cowl on the horizon, will give us a corresponding airspeed of 90 knots for a power setting of 25 inches of manifold pressure and 2550 RPM. The aircraft is balanced, aeroplane's trimmed to climb out, hands off, and the cowl flaps are fully open. Normal cruise for a 185. Lower the nose till the horizon's approximately 5 inches above the coaming panel. Allow the airspeed to build up to 110 knots. This is a normal cruise speed for the 185. Reduce the power to 25 inches of manifold pressure, 23 inches of manifold pressure, and the RPM to 2400. And trim the aircraft to fly hands off. Lean the aircraft out as necessary for smooth running, and cowl flaps as required to maintain engine and oil temperature. The descent into 185. Close the throttle to 15 inches of manifold pressure, holding the nose in the cruise attitude until the airspeed drops back to our descent speed of 80 knots. And lower the nose to an attitude of the horizon approximately halfway up the windscreen, maintaining a descent speed of 80 knots. Trim the aircraft as required to fly it hands off. Close the cowl flaps and maintain the aircraft in balance. A medium turn. We're going to start our medium turn from the west. We'll do a turn right back round on the west again. Roll the aircraft in with aileron, a little bit of rudder to balance. As we pass through 15 degrees, a little bit of back pressure to maintain our nose attitude. Keep the aircraft rolling to a 30-degree angle of bank. We'll find that the 185 will lose approximately 5 knots in the turn. 30 degrees as indicated on the artificial horizon. The aircraft is in balance. Just continue the turn, holding off any bank with aileron. pressure so the aircraft doesn't climb, roll back out onto west again. Normal stall in the 185. Initially check for any loose obstacles. Have a good look around and check that there is no other aircraft in the vicinity. Check below. This is where we'll be going when we stall the aircraft. To stall the aircraft, we'll just close the throttle, raise the nose to the high climb. Symptoms of the stall are reducing airspeed, reducing noise level, sloppy controls, the aircraft becoming slightly unstable, stall warning blowing, sink, the nose drops away, we relax the back pressure and apply power at the same time, full power, and then ease out of the dive once we've increased airspeed. We'll note there that we've lost approximately 130 feet. At this point, I'll do another stall. Instead of recovering with power, we'll recover without the use of power and into the glide. Same procedure, closing the throttle, nose to the high climb, lack of noise, sloppy controls. Remember, if a wing drops, pick it up with opposite rudder, not aileron. Stall warning blows, the nose drops away, relax the back pressure, allow the airspeed to build up, aircraft becomes unstalled, ease out of the dive and set in the glide. We can see we lost over 200 feet. Entering downwind, first thing we need to do is our pre-landing checks. Consist of checking that the brakes are off, the undercarriage is down, our mixture is in the rich position, our fuel is onto both tanks and sufficient for a go-round, our hatches and harness are all secure. After doing this, we can set the aircraft up on the base leg, ready for an approach and landing. The normal approach and landing consists of initially bringing the power back to 15 inches of manifold pressure, 20 degrees of flap once we come into the flap extension speed, holding 80 knots, setting the aircraft up with a lower nose attitude than for the normal cruise descent. Normal descent procedures apply. Nose attitude for increased or decreased airspeed, and power for our rate of descent. Rolling on to final. Applying flap as required to maintain a constant approach path. The runway threshold should be approximately 1/3 the way up the windscreen at this stage. As we come on to short final, it's brakes, undercarriage down, pitch control at full fine, bringing our airspeed back to 70 knots. Rounding the aircraft off, holding it off, bringing the control column all the way back so the aircraft lands in the 3-point attitude. Keeping it straight, the aircraft will tend to become slightly unstable. As it slows down, use opposite rudder to correct any swing. If the swing gets too violent, then use brake to correct for it. Bring the aircraft to a stop and raise the flaps. stalk and approach. If we need to make it go round, apply full power, climb away at 60 knots, reduce the flap to 20 degrees, as our airspeed increases through 75 knots, reduce our flap, and set the power at our normal climb power, and climb away normally.